My goodness. Lights, camera, action. I don't think so, but anyway, this benefits people to be able to look back and if they've missed the class, they can actually get back to go over it again, which is good. So, welcome, Sister Samantha. Are you okay there?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, just at the outset, before we look into the book of James today, let us just tell you what will happen the other side of Christmas. So in January there'll be a class test. So I'm assuming that you're a good credit student, Sister Samantha. So there'll be a short class test in January, and there'll be no teaching, but I will be here to support you through that. Many of the questions that will be asked will be filling out the blanks in your like you do for the self-help piece, right? And there might be a few other questions around. Tell us, so for example, tell us 4 or 5 instances where the Lord tells us we are better, better this, better that, or let us, things like that. It's not going to be too onerous. You can bring or have your notes at hand when you do that test. So again, there shouldn't be an issue for that. Okay. So that lets us do this. So last time you weren't able to be with us. I hope that you managed to get to see or hear the teaching. But today we're finished with the book of Hebrews. Hey, we've finally gotten through Hebrews, and we're moving on to a new book today. We're moving on to the book of James, and it's be quite interesting to see where this is going to take us. So let's just pray for a moment, and then we'll get underway. Lord Jesus, we give you thanks, praise for Sister Samantha. Lord, we just thank you in Jesus' name as we share in your word, Lord, and what you've expounded through the book of James. Lord, just teach us and help us to understand, help us to be encouraged and built up in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. So, the book of James. So, as we know, the general epistles, or the general letters that we study in this class, were written to people at large rather than specific churches like Paul wrote to. So Galatians 1 verse 19 tells us that James was the half-brother of Jesus. So James was the half-brother of Jesus. There's other James mentioned in the Bible. In fact, I think there's three or four of them. Scholars eventually say that the one that we're referring to who is responsible for this book or this letter is the half-brother of Jesus. So, half-brother of Jesus, well, just to clarify what we mean by that, is that for James, Mary was his mother, Joseph was his father, but for Jesus, as we know, Mary was his earthly mother, but the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit or God is the Father of Jesus. Yeah, so that makes James half-brother. So he was unbeliever during the Lord's ministry, and this is the case for the other brothers as well. So we'll later in May we'll touch upon the book of Jude, and Jude is like James. Jude was like a half-brother to Jesus, and all of these brothers, even during Jesus' ministry, they were still unbelievers, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes, there are more challenges within a physical family or a close-knit family. to grasp some things. So like one of them picks up faith or picks up Christianity and repents and gets baptised, and the others don't want to know. But eventually they do come to faith. So after the crucifixion, James remained with his mother Mary. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 7 tells us that after the resurrection he saw the Lord. Like Paul, he came to faith after the resurrection. He was in the upper room during the day of Pentecost. So what that brought James to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, that Jesus was God in the flesh. And what happened after that? Well, following conversion, he pastored the church at Jerusalem. In the book of Acts, chapter 15, it tells us as well that he moderated the first church council. So he didn't just pastor the church in Jerusalem, but he moderated the first church council. So even like churches like Antioch and all of that, like sent representatives, Barnabas and all that went up to the church council. So you find that James, when he got faith, he was very, very passionate about it. Okay, and you could say, well, he was installed as pastor at Jerusalem because he was Jesus' half-brother. But there's more to James than that. He wasn't just given an office. By James's character, we know that he deserved to be in that office. He was called James the Just due to his sterling character. And that's a lesson for us all, and it's maybe the biggest challenge in walking the Christian road, is that we can say many words. We can say, oh, we believe, or we this, or we hold to that. But ultimately, our character, our personality, how we behave and how we live, if we live out our faith, then that's what makes a difference. And James had a sterling character, so he didn't just say speak the talk. He also walked the walk. Okay, so he proved by his lifestyle that he lived up to what he said. Paul indeed called James a pillar of the church. It's likely that the book of James might be written somewhere between 45 and 49 AD. Now, realising that the Jewish calendar and our own calendar differs a bit, we're really only talking about just over a decade after the crucifixion and after the resurrection. In history, that's a very short time. It's probably, albeit it appears way down towards nearer to the end of the New Testament than to the beginning of it, it was probably the first New Testament book that was written, or the first New Testament letter that was written. So even before the Gospels were penned or written, it seems that the book of James was there. He was the first apostle to be martyred somewhere around 62, 63 AD. So out of all the apostles, he was the first to be martyred, and many of them ended up being martyred following him. James is written, the letter's written from the standpoint of a Jewish Christian. So Jewish people that have converted come over to believe in Jesus Christ as Messiah and to take on Christianity. It addressed Jewish Christians scattered abroad after the dispersion. And we know historically that there came a point that in the book of Acts, when Stephen was on the scene, we see the beginning of persecution. We see the beginning of people starting to really come against Christians. And because of that, there was a big dispersion. There was people moved out from Jerusalem, from Judah, and they eventually made it to many, many places across the world. But, you know, there was a big dispersion. And this is, the book of James is written to some of these people that have been dispersed. These people were targets of persecution from both their own countrymen, so their own Jewish brothers and sisters, as well as the Gentiles. So those that remained in the law, those that held fast as the Pharisees and Sadducees did, would criticise and come against these people that have come over to Christianity. The Gentiles too would, if they didn't have faith, they would come against these people as well. So they were being persecuted from all sides. People who are coming over from Judaism tended to separate faith from works. And this is where James is really making a point. James really is focused on addressing that faith absolutely, utterly matters. Without faith, we cannot please God. But out of faith, there's got to be a resultant lifestyle, behaviour, actions that show that we are of faith. James also wrote in this letter to encourage people and to correct disorders. So, what is this book compared with? Well, in the Old Testament, you read the book of Proverbs, and many people say that the letter of James is like a New Testament Proverbs, and there is a lot of teaching in there. There's a lot of content that you can just stop every verse or every couple of verses and think, well, what does that really mean? How does it apply today? And there's a lot of material packed there. Whereas in many books of the Bible you find that there's a story being told and you can go like chapter upon chapter upon chapter and it's still relating to the same thing. So, the book is full of practical instructions. It focuses on genuine religion, genuine faith, and genuine wisdom. So, religion, faith, and wisdom. It deals more with religion than salvation. Let me clarify that a little bit. Salvation, as we know, is when we come from that point of being sinful for the first time, and we have saving faith and saving grace that leads us to the altar, and we repent, we get baptised, we get filled with the Holy Ghost. But religion thereafter is how we live that new life. You know, God says that all old things have passed away, all things have become new. How do we live that? You know, and religion, probably in its purest sense of the word, ought to be around that. I know from my other class that many people have taken religion and inserted a whole lot of man's ideas and things into it. But purely religion is what are we doing out of our faith? How are we living that? one can be religious and not be saved, right? And we see a whole lot of pious people in the world today that look religious. Look, they look as though they ought to be in a church, or they ought to be a priest, or something that is ministering, but they've got no faith, right? And even in state churches today, you know, a minister's work is a vocation, it's a job. You know, they're employed to be ministers. They're employed to give a nice talk on a Sunday, but how much faith do they need to do that? I'm not tarring everybody with the same brush. There are evidently people out there that minister in these denominations that have a lot of faith, but ultimately, as much as that, you've got people who are there doing a job, putting nice words together, and giving a lecture, giving a talk, and claiming a salary and a living from it. You know, and so you can be religious and not be saved. Okay, but you cannot be saved ultimately without. It's impossible to be saved without being religious. Okay, so that taken the other way about is, once we've got salvation, we need to live in it. We need to, you know, that the expression of that faith that we now have will show. The new creation will show to the world around us. So you can have one side that's a pretense, putting up a front of an image, and not being faithful at all, or we can be so faithful that people just see the Lord in us. So religion's outward and public worship. Salvation concerns inward results of faith. So salvation changes your heart, right? And we can't see your heart visually, but when you express your faith, your worship to God, we can see what's in your heart. We can understand what's in your heart. So, Epistle emphasises the need to a living, active faith. It goes back to Sermon on the Mount. Now we know that James was there when Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount. So he's referring out to this in this letter. He proposes real works of Christian living. For James, faith isn't an abstract proposition, so faith isn't just something that, oh, I've accepted this internally. It's more than that. It has effects in the real world, and our faith can have and does have effects in the real world. If we have faith that we only keep to ourselves, then it only encourages us, and eventually that faith will begin to fade out. But if we show our faith to the world, then we can see things happen. We can see miracles, wonders taking place, and we can be so encouraged that it builds us up in our faith yet further. He offers many examples to illustrate his point. Faith endures in the midst of trials. Faith calls upon God for wisdom. So we're going through a tough time. You know, we do not give up, we hold on in there. And faith will reach out to God for wisdom. Not to, you know, we sometimes pray to the Lord, take this sickness or whatever away from me. And sometimes, yes, he does. But the real faith is, even if we have to endure that, is what we do with it. Do we live victoriously through that? Do we overcome it? And if we do, then we're expressing faith through that. Faith bridles the tongue and sets aside wickedness. So sometimes, we want to, our human makeup causes us to want to lash out and say something because we're angry or annoyed or something. But faith helps us to control that tongue, and it helps us to avoid wickedness. Faith helps us to go and visit orphans and widows. So faith helps us to reach out to the strangers. That people do not need to be part of our circle, part of our favourite group, or our closest friends, or our closest family. But faith enables us to reach out beyond that. As much as all of these people around us who are close to us need faith, and they need us to be strong in faith around them too. Faith will go and reach out to, like the Samaritan did, to the man in the road, to the injured man, because everybody else walked by on the other side. But he saw, well, look, there's someone who needs help, and had the faith to reach out and minister that help. James says that the life of faith is comprehensive. It impacts every area of our lives. So really there's not a part of our lives that we can close off in a little room and say, well, that's private to me, and I'm not letting faith get near to it. I'm not submitting that to God. Faith ought to be comprehensive throughout our lives. It drives us to truly engage in the lives of others in the world. So it drives us to be evangelistic, it drives us to reach out, it drives us to care, that we might well be on our way to heaven, but people around us haven't made that decision, and people around us are going through a whole lot of needless suffering and pain and anguish because they haven't learned who is the author of truth. They haven't learned that Jesus is the way, the truth and the life. So regarding trials, temptations will come to us all, and there's never a truer phrase said, really. Temptations, trials will come to us all. The pressures that try our faith in God. So sometimes we get tempted, but sin isn't being tempted. Sin is responding to that temptation and embracing it. Okay, so it tries our faith in God. James 1 verse 2 indicates that persecution or temptation equals trials or external forces. So we might get a temptation, a trial, something that's come upon us internally, sickness or affliction, or it could be some external force. So like these people who were being persecuted, they weren't being persecuted or involved or consenting to that themselves. It was external forces, external groups that were coming against them. So persecution and famine are external sources. Illness, sorrow and death are more internal to us. James 1 verse 14 shows that temptations also arise from physical lusts or personal lusts. So you can be tempted by something that the devil is kind of saying, well, okay, why not go and have that drink of alcohol, or why not do this? Hath God really said that you can't, right? And that's temptations that try to appeal to our flesh, right? So there's temptations that come in that we have not any immediate control over, but there's temptations that come that tempt us, literally, that say, oh, come and do this. Having the proper attitude towards trials will help us to prepare and face up to trials, okay, of whatever way they come. So like Jesus, when he was tempted, he said to the devil, and hath God said, it is written, it is written, it is written, okay? And he dealt with the devil, he dealt with Satan. As Satan tried to tempt him, or trying to tempt the human element, the man within Jesus. So Jesus dealt with that, and we ought to be able to deal with these kind of temptations the same way. But when we have things that come against us that we cannot immediately, can't change ourselves, and people are coming against us, or illness has got a hold of us, it's how we manage that, how we get through that with the help of the Lord that matters. James urged people to rejoice when tested. He says that testing gives knowledge and experience, and knowledge and experience result in patient endurance. Patient endurance results in spiritual maturity. So when we get a test, we get some knowledge out of it, okay, that helps us next time round.
Yeah.
When that knowledge helps us to endure and helps us to be able to face into the next challenge better, okay? And patient endurance, when we endure through some things, then we grow in our walk, we grow and mature in Christ. Temptation in that sense allows us to grow in grace. So it provides an opportunity. Some people will say, oh, temptation's a bad thing. Yes, it can be, but you know, out of it is how we deal with it. It's how we deal with it. And if we choose to say that we're following God through this, and we have the victory, then it will benefit us that we've been through something, because it will make us stronger. Joy comes from the result of the trial, the patience to endure it. So James 1 verses 5 to 11. If anyone lacks understanding regarding temptations, divine wisdom is available, so we are not left on our own to say how are we to handle this. All too often in our own minds we try to do just that, and we go, my goodness, this has happened to me, what do I do? And sometimes the last source or the last port of call that we go to is Jesus, or get on our knees in prayer, when that ought to be the first thing we do. Then we encounter the question of works. Some people say that James contradicted Paul, and they make a big deal of it and say, oh, Paul said, you know, that we're saved by faith, and James says that we're saved, or that works is important. Okay, it's not opposing camps, but people outside of the Bible and Bible believing Christianity will try to say, well, look, you've got one apostle basically facing off to another. That is not the case. There's a harmony of theology, but a difference in emphasis. Okay, so it's where the emphasis lies. The theology, the actual teaching is still the same, that we are saved by faith, not a doubt about it. Paul focuses on God's justification. So God saves us by faith and through grace. James concentrates on works, but not works to get to that point of salvation, but works that come through the other side of that, works that are our lifestyle after we are saved. And it exemplifies or shows forth that justification. So we're saved by faith, we're justified, and we show that by how we live in this world. James wrote to Jewish people, encouraging them to grow in Christian faith. He emphasises that good actions naturally flow from those filled with the Spirit. So if we're really filled with the Spirit and we stay in God's presence, then good actions will flow out of our lives. Because not because we're commanded to go do this, do that, but because that we love God and we worship Him, and our life just exudes God. So when we then turn our hand to anything, we do it as God would do it. And that is showing forth our works. If fruits of the Spirit cannot be seen, much as Paul describes in Galatians 5:22 and 23, he calls the fruits of the Spirit as they're not seen, but they have to be demonstrated. So love, joy, peace, all of that. Where is it going to find visibility? It's going to find visibility through our actions, through our lives. So we will demonstrate love. We'll show long suffering. We'll manifest peace. All of that, kindness, goodness, faith. It has to be shown through us and through our actions. Because ultimate description of relationship between faith and works. Jewish Christians were so ingrained originally in the Mosaic law, the law of Moses, and its system of works, which demanded so much. Like the law demanded so much to be done, so much ritualistic endeavour. But James spent a lot of time explaining the truth that no one is justified by works of the law. Even by trying to keep all the various laws, to do so is impossible. So there's, at some point or other, if we try to keep all of the wide-ranging Mosaic law, there would come a time that we fall over at one point because we can't keep all of it. And transgressing the smallest part of the law made them guilty of all of it. So James 2:10 said the law is one entity. Breaking one part of it is breaking all of it. Okay, so where does that leave us? It leaves us with the grace of the Lord, because Jesus said, look, you can't keep all of the law. He pointed us to the main parts, the main areas that we ought to focus on is to love the Lord your God as one God, and to love your neighbour as yourself. Doesn't mean to say that the 10 Commandments, like thou shalt not kill, all of that goes away. No, it doesn't. But all of the law in Mosaic terms was way wider than that. And you had all the ritualistic stuff, all the ceremonial law, all of that people just couldn't keep. And that's why today, I was talking about this in the other class too, is that a lot of people say, we can't eat